You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. And my guests who have been assisting us to do the discussion are Dr. Stephen Amwa, he's MP in Shaeso and member Finance Committee in Parliament. Adam Mutawakilu is former MP and a financial economist. Adam Mutawakilu is former MP for Damongo and former ranking member of the Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament. Dr. John Osai Kwapong, research methods, just between the two of us and his friends on social media. Political scientist, democracy and development fellow, CDD Ghana. Mary Awalana Ada is programs manager, Ghana Integrity Initiative, and Suleiman Ibrahima is executive director, Media Foundation for West Africa. Just a couple of your messages, and then we go on to Ken Oforiatta facing the storm in Parliament over the censure. Kofi Amwa says, same entrapment, but one fell and the other stood. Where again lies your defense, uncle? Gatsmo 1 says, we didn't hear Mr. Nyantechi in the number 12 expose say that the businessman needed to part way 5 million, you mean to part with 5 million and 3 million to the president and vice president respectively in order to secure contracts. Please, let's be honest, in this country, Nyantechi and Boaheng can't be wrong. It's the practice, it's the norm. Then Amofa says, if it will take Tiger IPI to reveal corrupt action like what led to the sacking of the Minister of State, Edu Boaheng, then what is the National Investigative Agencies doing? Kelvin Baden says, in conclusion, this is a show of bad character by the minister. Prince Marcus says, everyone is innocent until caught red-handed. Dijala 8 says, Anas has done a good job, but I think he should have rather focused more on the presidency. Harry Olufunwa says, my take is that it was wrong for the video to have such a misleading title. You cannot put A as a title and go ahead to show B. Much of the material is years old. It has allowed culprits to go unpunished for years and has placed specific issues out of context. Well, they say crime has no expiry. Foma says, President commended for what? Or isn't this the same Edu Boaheng? The same president was insisting was an excellent minister he had no intention of sacking just a few weeks ago. All right, so those were some of your messages. Now, Parliament has been busy. A committee in Parliament has been busy looking at the possibility of passing a vote of censure on the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. And many have expressed concerns about what is going on in that house. So let's begin that discussion too. And let me start with Mary. From your perspective and looking at what is going on, this is a good move, is it not?
Certainly, Samson. I believe it's a good move, and for our democracy to grow and continue to flourish, we need acts such as these.
Okay.
And I take my viewpoints from, if you look at the Constitution in Article 23, it talks about providing fair and reasonable opportunity for somebody who has to respond to an issue to do so. I paraphrase. And so for me, when the issue came up in Parliament, the Speaker did his part by assessing what could have been done. And in his judgment, the fair and reasonable opportunity was to facilitate the process of creating the ad hoc committee, which would then give the minister who had been cited on 7 grounds to then come and answer with his legal representation. So on the part of the speaker, that was good. It constituted the committee. And on the first day that I had opportunity to watch some of it, apart from the heckling, the unnecessary heckling that happened, I thought it was a very good process, because then the minority had opportunity to present their grounds, and it went so very well. And I think also because we had two co-chairs coming from the different parties, it also helped. The only thing that perhaps we could have avoided was too much heckling on the part of the co-chairs, but we can't have it all smooth. But I think on the whole, it was a very good process. The person who was accused brought in his lawyer, who made a strong case to be given a number of days to come back. And that happened as well. So I think the committee on the whole did a good job. And looking at the questioning from yesterday's session of the minister, I believe that also went very well. But my impression of the whole process is that I think it created a platform for the Minister of Finance to explain himself, and that is good. The fact that it was aired to the whole country to have a look at it also was very good for everybody to have their perspectives from the horse's own mouth. That was really good. I get the impression that his apology, though well-intentioned and very emotive, would have won him some, scored him some points. I believe so. However, the issues, the antecedents of the presentation, where he continues to premise the apology based on Russia and based on Ukraine and COVID, is my worry, because we all know that those exogenous factors also happened in other places, as near as our Côte d'Ivoire, our brethren who are around us, and yet they are not in the mess we see ourselves. So for me, on the whole, I think the minister acquitted himself. Per the questions they asked him, he responded. It's left with the plenary to then determine if the provided answers meet what they were expecting, and also to look forward to the next steps. But for me, I believe that my whole take on this is that we could have been spared this tortuous process where we are expecting a budget which is delaying, by the minister who calls from, if you remember, Samson, the Citizens Coalition Against Corruption, which my organization belongs to, a former member which you belong to, have made calls that the explanations are not tenable. And so at this point, to inform trust and confidence in the investment space, and then also to rejuvenate the citizenry's trust in the economy, to ensure that we are not picking our CDs and buying dollars to hide and others, the minister should step aside. I think it would have been, he would have spared us a whole lot of hassle. And having this process in place where they are also spending more money to sit and others. So for us, we think that as a Citizens Coalition and GI, this process shouldn't have happened at all. We should be concentrating on the budget and how this country would get out of the situation we are in.
Yes, Suleiman, listen to the finance minister, and let's examine whether, in fact, he apologized to Ghanaians about anything.
Our economy is facing difficulties, and the people of Ghana are enduring hardships. As a person President Akufo-Addo has put in charge of this economy, I feel the pain personally, professionally, and in my soul. I see and feel the terrible impact of rising prices of goods and services on the lives and livelihoods of ordinary Ghanaians. I feel the stress of running a business, but it is the strength and perseverance of the Ghanaian people that inspire me and my colleagues in government every morning. And it's to press on. That is what gives me the strength to press on, to find solutions and relief for Ghanaians to the myriad of problems that our country and the rest of the world are facing, especially since March 2020. Co-chairs, let me use this opportunity to say to the Ghanaian people what I believe with courage every finance minister around the world may wish to say to their people now. I am truly sorry. It's a pretty difficult period for me and my family. It's historic, and that's dark historic to be censured as finance minister. It's a little bit sad when also we delve into these grounds, and some have had to be stepped down because it's a very serious period in the country's economic history and life, and it sends very strong signals which are quite destabilizing. But let me reiterate my gratitude to the Honorable Speaker and the co-chairs and the committee for at least democracy and rule of law and giving me the opportunity to be here. As I said in my submission earlier today, these grounds have attacked my person, my character, and my professional integrity. And I think we have shown here that those were not very sound. But I wait to hear from the plenary. This has been a really traumatic experience for me. Even more distressingly, the professionalism of the staff at the Ministry of Finance who work tirelessly in the management of the economy. I'm feeling very tarnished. It's also been a very difficult week for the ministry with the exit of our Minister of State. That that's not really elicit and enhance or encourage those not in the political sphere to come and help.
Yes, Sule, so the question some have been asking is, did he actually say he's sorry to Ghanaians in the context in which he said it? And he said, let me take this opportunity to say to the Ghanaian people what I believe with courage. Every finance minister around the world may wish to say to his people, now, I am truly sorry. And then people say, if you juxtapose that with everything else that he had to say, not accepting any, fault, saying this was inherited problems, this was external, and it had nothing to do with him. He has managed the economy well. What do you say?
Well, Samson, let me start by saying that I admire the finance minister for two things. The first is the sheer resilience to continue to stay onto that position despite all that has happened. And the second is his usual calm demeanor, how he takes his time to respond to the issues and when he's making presentations. In terms of whether or not he apologized, I think that, yes, he did. He says what he believes that every finance minister with courage would say to their people at this time. Of course, it is not every country that is in a mess, and it is not every finance minister who is supervising a mess, as we are witnessing in our country. And therefore, perhaps it ought to have been qualified that all finance ministers who are currently managing economic crisis such as what we face ought to apologize to their people. In terms of not accepting any blame and trying to push the blame on economic factors, matters of legacy and all of that, and of course, for the fact that he stayed on despite the pressure, despite the historic demand by parliamentarians from the MPP for him to resign, despite the civil society campaign for him to go, despite the daily hashtag Ken must go, and for him staying on, I didn't expect that he would go there and accept that I have, made mistakes and indeed I have been incompetent and all of that. So, to be honest, I think that yes, it was an apology. Perhaps it ought to have been qualified in one way or the other, but I didn't expect that he would go there and admit that. I mean, if he would admit, then he would have resigned long ago to sort of redeem the party, to save the president, all the hassle, and all of that. But having said that, I think what is happening, apart from the fact that it's historic, it's also very important. And I haven't listened to it, was of the opinion that if legally it was something that was allowed, we should have an arrangement where maybe every 2 years, that's a midterm review, having ministers appear before a committee like this, and then being interrogated and asked questions about things that have happened within their sector. But of course, that may not be something that would be allowed within the legal remits of the constitution and procedures that we operate at this stage. So what has happened certainly has helped us to know a little bit more beyond what we read, what we hear, and the debates that we've been following. But all said and done, I am so firmly of the opinion that Ken must go.
Okay. Nonetheless, you still share the view that he's demonstrated rare quality of leadership. That's resilience, right? Where there is the mob, everybody asking that he be, if you like, quote unquote, lynched. He's still hanging on.
Well, I don't know if that is a leadership quality, but it is something that, to the extent that he's still there. And I thought when the MPs did that, the following day, what I would have read would have been Ken Ofori-Atta resigns. So I'm still surprised that he's still at post, and the fact that he's there to respond to the questions, well, maybe it's admirable.
All right. Now, Dr. John Osai-Kwapong, it's I don't really know how to ask this question, but this is it. The NPP MPs, at least we know now, 89 of them or so. The number has moved from 80 that we knew, and then now we hear it's about 90 plus. They want him out. Now, the NDC also want him out. There is, if you like, a majority of Ghanaians, there's a groundswell of opinion against his continued stay in office. And yet the two parties cannot agree on the censure motion.
Yes. So for the MPP MPs, I don't know if it's because the censure motion was moved by NDC and therefore on purely political partisan grounds, that is their quote-unquote objection to it, right? Which is, we know we want him out, but we won't do it on your terms, right? The other day I was asking myself, would they have been okay if these 80 or almost 90 plus MPs were the ones who came up with the censure motion, moved it, and then solicited political support in terms of the numbers from the NDC MPs? Would they have been okay with that sort of approach, right? So that's one of the issues for me. But I think,
Doc,
yes.
how do does the ordinary person appreciate what is going on? As many as 98 of the MPs in the MPP say the president should relieve him if he will not resign. Then all the NDC MPs also say, well, he should go. Why can't they agree? Because all they want is for him to go. The same thing.
That, but ultimately, it is up to the appointing authority to also say, yes, I agree, he must or he must not go. Now, if you remember, a couple of weeks ago on the show, you raised the issue of what is going to happen, and there was a discussion about the meeting that took place after the 80 MPs came out, and it was the response was that the president had asked that they wait for two things to happen: the IMF negotiations as well as the budget. And I remember you kept pushing the whip to answer the question: what does it mean that, quote unquote, the president would act? Does act meaning he's going to relieve the finance minister, or does act meaning he's going to say, "I've heard you, but I can't do this"? The president has said over and over again, at least the few times that I've heard the president, he's made it very clear that he has no intention of relieving the finance minister of his role. And I also don't think the finance minister has any intention of resigning. So we'll just have to see how the censure motion plays out. If really it gets to the floor and the 98 MPs would, or the almost 90 MPs would join the NDCP board.
The motion, the process that is going on, people are displeased about it. The people are talking about unnecessary heckling, particularly from K.T. Hammond. He doesn't seem to want to listen to anybody, and making conclusive, categorical statements. And the MPP MPs appear to constitute a legal team for the minister, literally. That the minister didn't actually need to come with a lawyer.
Right, but Samson, I think you also have to understand that this is also a very political process. And in a political process, political passions tend to go up. You're right. I mean, the Honorable K.T. Hammond, I think generally that's also his style and his temperament, right? The way he talks, things like that. But yes, at some point in the process, you see the heckling, you see the interruptions, you see the clashes here and there. But again, it's a very political process. And so I can see how a very political process would sometimes have all of those motions.
As far as we are concerned, who is in charge? He makes one ruling, and then the co-chair, Dr. Dominic Ayeni, also comes in, makes a ruling or overrules him, and I'm lost watching them.
Right, and I'm not sure why they went with the co-chair model, right? I would have preferred a single chair for the committee. But I think it's also been very helpful that Dr. Ayeni is his co-chair, who has a very different, for the most part, a very different temperament. Once in a while, you do see that they engage in a little tete-a-tete and seem to, agree on, well, how we're going to proceed from here. But I think he's been a good counterbalancing force against, the personality and the temperament of Honorable KT. And overall, they've managed to, shepherd the process since it began, and we will have to see what the ultimate outcome is. But yes, I know the heckling, the interruptions has been frustrating for me, has been frustrating. If you look at a lot of the commentary on social media, you see that others have picked up on that and have expressed frustration with regards to that too.
All right. Thank you very much. I will take our very final break here, and then when we return, we have Dr. Stephen Amoah and Muta Wakilu in the studio continuing the discussion. Thank you very much to Suleiman Abrahima, Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa, Mary Awalana Ada, Programs Manager, Ghana Integrity Initiative, and Dr. John Osai Kwapon, Political Scientist, Democracy and Development Fellow. When we return, like I said, the two gentlemen in the studio will continue with us to finish up with the discussion. We'll be right back. Of time on radio. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And Dr. Stephen Amoah, MP in Shaiso and Member Finance Committee in Parliament, and Adam Muta Wakilu, former MP for Damango and former ranking member for Mines and Energy Committee in Parliament. Now, so let's begin with Dr. Steve Amoah. The Finance Minister in this process doesn't appear to admit even one single thing as far as the motion for censure is concerned. He ends by saying practically that most of the financial problems are inherited an external. So he's done a good job, and that this is actually witch hunting, and it was needless.
He said witch hunting.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. He wrote it.
Thank you very much. I think, Samson, if the finance minister said that, it is in the context we are all trying to speak on. Of course, constitutionally, I think Article 82.4 provides this mandate, if I'm correct, you're a lawyer, for this triggering the censure. And then the Article 23, if I'm also correct, gives the opportunity for fair hearing. So constitutionally, one cannot debate the exercise going on to any large extent. But then the question is, this whole brouhaha, as a matter of fact, was based on the fact that our economy is not doing well and that it is his fault. And this is the context, all of us, if there is no other motive or other things that people don't want to talk about, we are based on. But is that a fact or not? Let's all be very honest. In my opinion, that is not true. That is my opinion. And
what is not true?
The fact that he is the cause of our economic decline or whatever, I don't think that is true.
He's the one managing the economy.
So
who
that's
else
why
should be
allow
blamed?
me to explain my point. If you keep on interjecting, you don't allow me. I beg, just do me a favor. I've said it, I disagree. So why I should be given opportunity to do that? I'm just begging you. It is not true because the economic primary macro indicators are there. Economy or financial economics is not something you can, out of your own intuition or opinion, say things. No, the facts are there, numbers are there. He took over this country from the year 2017. Of course, the 2016 figures are there to use. The areas and the parameters we are talking about, what were they? Talking about GDP, inflationary rate, talking about lending rate, talking about policy rate, all of them are there, something. First 2-3 years of he being, or MPP government, I don't want to limit to him, MPP being in government, what were the figures? What were the figures? Were they doing better? Because, to the best of my knowledge, GDP had grown from about 3.2, 3.4, averagely to about 7%. Policy rate was about 25.5. It had reduced to about 12.5. T-bills were about 22 point something, had been reduced the same period for about 14. Reserve had been increased from about 5.8 to about 7.4, given about 4.3 months. All these were happening. Let's be very honest. There's something happening globally or not. Factually, globally something happened. And talking about the fact that, one of our speakers, Madame, said that Côte d'Ivoire and others, let's put this in the right perspective. Côte d'Ivoire, these French-speaking countries are basically not having their economic sovereignty. Everything is enshrined in France, French government. So it's a different thing when it comes to these parameters. Two, they have different outputs when it comes to outlays and expenditures. Are they doing the same free school, the same country? There are differences. That is why we talk about global performances or African continental performances. Nobody can do country to country. Basically, that's what we do, industry against entity. So we look at these factors and see that, nothing had happened, but our economy was declining, so it is him. As I'm talking to you now, the global inflationary rate before the COVID was about 2%. Post-COVID is about 8% and over, which is, in terms of percentage, about 300%. We depend on these groups. I'm not comparing Ghana to one country. I'm talking about the fact that we depend on them. So if their markets are doing bad, what will happen to us? In any case, some of the even parameters we are talking about, based on where we say the money should go. Papa, policy rate even now, 24.5 is lower than 25.5 we inherited. GDP growth now is higher than we took over. Then when it comes to debt to GDP, any professional person should come and prove me wrong. What led to that situation? We have uncontrollable factors and controllable factors that you can't say that something is your fault. Let me finish this technical explanation here.
In the charge number 2, unconstitutional withdrawals from the consolidated fund in blatant contravention of Article 178 of the 1992 Constitution, supposedly for the construction of the President's Cathedral. Did you hear his response to that?
But what I know, you're a lawyer. I mean, you're a great lawyer, not just a lawyer. I think the constitutional, whatever, Article 21 and Article 131, what does it say? These are jurisdiction issues. Let's be very honest. Is it the Supreme Court that has the mandate in terms of interpretation and enforcement of the law to interpret this or not?
Did you hear his response that people are faulting when he says that I'm depending on, I'm funding cathedral on contingency?
No, contingency vote, not contingency fund.
It's contingency.
But there are differences,
The question is,
something
if
I was going to
with,
explain one point. Now
no,
I should forget about it.
You did quite a bit on that.
No, I was going to explain debt to GDP, why it's not his fault and why nobody can blame us as a government.
Okay, so if we can look at the process as per his answers, that's what we are treating. So if he's saying that this is how he's treating a cathedral project, which is costing us so much, and remember he says yesterday that this is a completely, totally government of Ghana project. Is it wise? People are asking that question. Is it wise, and is it being sincere and honest to say that you are going to do a cathedral project and you are going to fund it through contingency?
Contingency votes. We should have, I think that distinction was clear. But in any case, Samson, those who are saying that in terms of priority spending, discretionary spending arm of our budget, we shouldn't have picked that option, I cannot say they are wrong or right. Because different people have different views when it comes to matters of faith and belief. Some are also of the opinion that as God's country, we need God's intervention. We need God to help us couple with our work. Not only that thing alone. So other school of thought is saying that absolutely there's nothing wrong with it. Other school of thought is also saying that there's something wrong with it, especially the timing and looking at other areas of priority. So these are all discussions. But let me ask you, were we asking the finance minister to step down or resign based on the economic performance today or not? That is the core of the issue we are all discussing. There could be other issues people will raise. Let's be very honest with you, which they may be wrong or right. And I am saying that if it's the economy alone, then that would be very unfair. That is my opinion. It will be unfair because the parameters are clearly known. US GDP is over, debt to GDP is over 100%. UK over 100%. In fact, prices of goods and services, UK is about 400% from 1.74 to about 10.1. Talking about that, as I'm talking to you now, aviation sector, railway sector, postmaster sector, magistrates court sector in UK now, they've been on demonstration or they are still on demonstration. Prices of goods every week goes up. We depend on them. So let's accept this in this context. Then we can stick to specifics and say that, oh, this thing was done right, it could have been done right. So based on that, you should go off. But what I disagree is that people are saying that the economic hardship we are having today, and look, Samson, look at this factor. One of the things economically, my brother from the NDC are even quoting, is the exchange rate. Is that what we are talking about? Our government took over exchange rate of 4.2. Up to 14%. In terms of percentage increases, 233. Those who are calling his head, they took over 1%. Sorry, one CD to $1. They left 4.2. The difference is about, in terms of percentage increase, 320. The point is, most of the things people are talking about, they are not wrong. But these are long-term rituals that we need to manage as a country.
Yes.
Okay, let me ask you.
Akilo, I don't know if you felt the same as many people as they began to tweet.
I want to end with this.
I'm coming. As they began to tweet, when the issue, his answer about relying on contingency to fund the cathedral came up, that 42 million Ghana cedis you are using for a cathedral, and contingency means incidental. it means circumstances which you didn't predict, and you are not setting about. Okay. How did you feel when you got that answer? Do you feel like others who think this was very bad?
First, I considered the word contingency and related it to the cathedral. And if that fits, then many more things are supposed to have been paid. Contingency are unforeseen events. Certain events you cannot predict. And when they come up, you provide provision and take care of them. This cathedral is not an unforeseen. In fact, they started with the fact that it will be funded not through public funds. That it is the president promised, Nanado's promise to do it. And therefore, they will find a way to raise money to execute it. Later, they change their mind that it should be public. And it is not something that is hidden. So I expected it to have been captured in the budget and approved. So the fact that you now use it as contingency, and therefore contingency vote, and should come from the presidency budget for government machinery, I begin to wonder. So you can deceive Ghanaians, treat any item as contingency when in fact it doesn't fall. Then we must treat statutory funds as contingencies. Because from January until the majority raised an issue, common fund wasn't paid. National Service Secretariat, the allowances to them. These are things that affect lives.
Common fund.
Are you getting my point?
Funds are being paid.
I'm telling you, that these are things that affect human lives. National service personnel at home, the allowances are not being paid. Then we must treat it as contingency because it's going to save lives. And many more arrears have been outstanding. So I have realized that this man has just found a comfortable way to explain something that does not exist. For me, in fact, he has breached the law and must be taken on for that. But his point of saying that he's sorry and blaming external factors and inherited, just point out one thing to me, that the finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, is not in for Ghanaians. He's in to satisfy his selfish interests. That is my conclusion. Why? You ask me. Even if he was performing very well, assuming that he was doing excellently well, and Ghanaians says, we don't need you. Your own parliamentarians say they don't need you. Opposition says they don't. Some, about 98, which is more than 50%. You know, 137 and 98, as you stated.
Samson,
yes.
Is that factual?
Yeah, 98.
And you have the list?
It is.
98.
But they have spokespersons who have been leading them. Andy Appiah-Kubi has confirmed that. He continues to talk to us. Yeah.
That's about 72% of your members of parliament said they don't need you. 100% of minority MPs said they don't need you.
They say they wouldn't do business that he will preside or coming from the finance
But they called for
ministry.
his resignation. They called for his resignation. That was the call. And if that was not heeded to, this is the action they would take. Majority of civil society organizations says you should resign. The best thing is that, I'm working for you. You are saying that I should resign. Okay, let me resign. But all these groups saying that resign, and you still insist that you will resign, apologize, and still remain, then there is something beyond working for the people, but working for myself. I want to benefit something.
This is a minister we understand doesn't take salary, doesn't draw salary and all that.
That is what I'm saying. What he's benefiting is more than the salary. That is why he's not willing to resign. Let me tell you.
No.
Now,
this one is very unfair.
if you're a minister of finance, excuse me. If you're a minister of finance,
Something, but you are allowed
hello.
to say.
Let me. I'm setting an example. You're a minister of finance. You are responsible for selecting financial advisors. Then you select your company as financial advisor. and your company burning 157 million Ghana cedis.
Company he resigned from 2012.
Beneficial
Company that was working for your government.
Let me tell you something.
The same company was working for your government.
We have run out of time.
The same company was working for NDC.
That is what I'm saying.
So let me conclude.
The finance expert says that it is wrong to compare the USA debt to GDP to Ghana debt to GDP. That is comparing oranges to apples. It is not attainable because of their infrastructure, like roads, hospitals, and the rest of them. This has been Newsfile, and my outfit, as always, is by Habil's Couture. You can find them at Ajiringano Gate, East Legon, and the number to call is 0200 84 1988. Thank you all so very much. Have a good afternoon. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini, and this is Dr. Stephen Amwa and Adam Mutawakilu.